What's your home address? Where's she missing from?
14155 South Beaver Creek Road, number 201. The same as Ashley Pond.
And what's your daughter's name?
Miranda Gaddis, Gaddis. And no one's talked to her or seen her.
I know Ashley ran away, and the fact that the FBI are throwing both of these cases, into someone took them both.
I need to tell everyone about my father, man. About what he did to those girls.
Okay. What do you think he did?
I know what he did, man. He did that for girls. And then he killed them. This is where I have to stop against my family, man. Me and my brothers aren't like that. We got a good heart. If I have to, I will testify against my own father.
Crime, in many ways, is a manifestation of the duality of human nature. In some cases, it's impossible to unveil the face behind a mask digging through the layers of deceit and betrayal. It's difficult to come to terms with the fact that the criminal responsible for a heinous crime is not the person who had been suspected, but rather someone whom nobody would have ever imagined. Today's case is no exception. It's a story about a 12-year-old girl, Ashley Pond, who went missing without a trace on January 9th, 2002 from Oregon City. And just when everyone thought things couldn't get any worse, her 13-year-old classmate Miranda Gaddis also disappeared 2 months later on March 8, 2002. The events that unfolded in this case are nothing short of unimaginable. Families were torn apart, communities left in fear, and investigators left scratching their heads as they tried to unravel the twisted web of lies that surrounded this case. Every step of the investigation revealed new twists and turns, taking the nation on a roller coaster ride of emotions, from hope to despair, from disbelief to horror. So, how did the mystery unfold? Hello, and welcome back to M7 Crime Storytime, where we cover solved, unsolved, and twisted cases from around the world. Today, we take a look at the twisted case of Miranda Gaddis and Ashley Pond. But before we delve any further, please take the time to show your support by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and clicking on that notification bell to receive the latest videos straight to your inbox. Now that that's done, let's get to the case. Oregon City, Oregon is a hidden gem nestled in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. This charming city boasts a rich history and stunning natural beauty, making it a must-visit destination for travelers seeking an authentic Oregon experience. From the iconic Oregon City Municipal Elevator to the historic McLaughlin House, there's no shortage of cultural and historical landmarks to explore. Whether you're a history buff, nature lover, or simply seeking a peaceful getaway, Oregon City has something for everyone. But this place also witnessed the tragic end of two girls who met their untimely death in 2002. It all began on January 9th, 2002 in Oregon City, Oregon. On this winter morning, 12-year-old Ashley Pond was running late to meet the school bus. Ashley woke up that morning to her younger sister Brianna's voice and grabbed a quick breakfast. Just after 8 a.m., she put on Tommy Hilfiger jeans, a spaghetti-strap shirt, and a sweatshirt, waved goodbye to her mother Lori Pond, and rushed out the door. After school, she also had a dance class to attend. Unfortunately, she would end up missing school and the dance class, both that day and forever.
I woke her up in the morning, and I just told her to get up.
The bus stand was only minutes from the Newell Creek Village apartments where Ashley lived, so her mother didn't mind her walking alone. Little did Lori know, on that fateful day, her daughter embarked on a journey that would lead her to her doom. Ashley did not get on the bus and never made it to Gardner Middle School. The girl disappeared without a trace. As the day passed, Lori waited patiently for her daughter to call to pick her up from her dance class. When the call never came in after hours, Lori began to panic. She frantically called her school and dance class and found out that she didn't make it to either of the places. Helplessly, Lori called all her friends, hoping that Ashley might have been with one of them. Unfortunately, she did not get a positive response from anywhere. Out of options, Lori dialed 911 to file a missing persons report for Ashley.
She's been missing since this morning. She would never run away, though. Okay, you don't think she'd ever run away? No, that's something.
Something a little bit different then.
Officers from the Oregon City Police Department were dispatched to Lori's Newell Creek Village apartment, and they started their investigation into this disappearance. Although a search was immediately conducted, police were not concerned. They were considering the theory that Ashley had probably run away and would head back home in a few days. The news of Ashley Pond's disappearance spread like wildfire in Oregon City, and soon it became the only topic that anyone could talk about. Rumors began floating around that Ashley had indeed run away from home. But regardless of these theories, there was not a single clue to where she could have been. When police searched Ashley's room, all her favorite possessions were there. It was very unlikely for a 12-year-old not to take her belongings with her while running away from home. It further reinforced the fear that something terrible had happened to her. Trying to do anything to find her, Ashley's family began to distribute missing persons flyers for her. Every moment felt like an eternity to them, where they were unable to focus on anything but finding their loved one. Meanwhile, investigators sprang into action, retracing the last steps of Ashley. Her confirmed final location was the apartment complex, and no one could say for sure if she ever reached the bus stop. After interviewing some kids in the school bus, the police came to the conclusion that the disappearance occurred sometime between her leaving the apartment building and reaching the bus stop. The bus stop was positioned up on a hill. Behind the apartment complex, there was a wooded area, which kids often used as a shortcut to the bus stop. Investigators were unsure whether Ashley had taken the same road on the day of her disappearance. Although there were no concrete leads, after a few days of tireless searching, authorities were now considering the disappearance a possible kidnapping and even foul play. Without any other leads to pursue, investigators decided to look at those closest to Ashley, and that meant digging into her life. March 1st, 1989 marked the day when Lori brought her eldest daughter, Ashley, into the world, while she was unmarried and only 16 years old. Shortly after, Lori got married to her high school sweetheart, David Pond. More children soon entered the household, and Ashley became the elder sister to two younger siblings. Ashley was very loving and protective towards her siblings, especially her sister Brianna, who was just 18 months younger than her. Ashley was described as a laid-back and frivolous child who loved entertaining people. Due to her very bubbly nature, she made a lot of friends in Gardner Middle School. She was also a part of her dance team in school and rarely missed a dance class. The first few years of Ashley's life were no different from girls at her age. Sadly, it all changed around the age of 9 or 10, when her parents had a messy divorce. Out of all of Lori's children, Ashley was affected the most by the whole ordeal. While trying to accomplish the goal of paying less child support, David Pond unearthed a secret that had been buried for too long. Ashley's world came crashing down when a paternity test determined David Pond, the only father Ashley had ever known up until that point, was not her real father. Instead, her biological father was a man named Wesley Rowitker Jr. Surely, the revelation was a lot for Ashley, but she tried to embrace the truth with zeal. She even began regular weekend visits to Wesley in order to spend time with her father, trying to compensate for all those years lost. Sadly, the visits did not last long. After a brief period of time, Ashley said she no longer wanted to meet her father, accusing him of something despicable. Towards the very end of the year 2000, Ashley confessed to her mother and sister that Wesley was physically taking advantage of her. She acknowledged that the last time it happened was Christmas Eve of 2000. On January 5, 2001, Wesley Rowitker was indicted on 40 counts of abusing his own daughter. Integrity should not be expected from a man who is capable of abusing his own child. So, along with his lawyer, Wesley painted Ashley as a troubled young girl who would lie about anything and everything. Ashley's recantation of statements against her father also invalidated her credibility. Eventually, Wesley pled no contest to a much lesser charge and received just 6 months of probation with a no-contact order in September of 2001. Coincidentally, all of these took place right before the disappearance. Ashley's mother, Lori, had her eyes on Wesley regarding Ashley's disappearance and informed authorities about her concerns. He had both motive and opportunity to commit an abduction. To check whether or not he really was involved in Ashley's vanishing, investigators paid him a visit in the Portland home he shared with his father. At first, Wesley seemed to be only giving the background information regarding his relationship with Ashley. But in a surprising turn, he actually admitted to the investigators that he had abused his own daughter. He also added that his drug addiction and wrong choices in life led him there, and he was glad that Ashley turned him in. He insisted that he was ashamed of his actions and one day wished to make it right with his little girl. His version of longing for forgiveness might have seemed phony, but his alibi was stronger. He told the investigators that on the morning of Ashley's disappearance, he had breakfast with his father in a local restaurant. Then both men worked on an old truck until the afternoon. His father confirmed it, and the stories seemed to check out. While investigators had to put Wesley Roetger on the back burner, their attention shifted to another one of Ashley's closest. It was time for Ashley's mother, Lori Pond, to take the heat. Investigators found out many disturbing details about Lori, who by no means was a flawless mother. She had previously been accused of neglecting her children on many occasions, and her alcohol addiction played a significant part in this. In fact, she had multiple run-ins with law enforcement. From January 25, 2001 to January 9, 2002, on 5 separate occasions, Lori was contacted by law enforcement regarding her parenting skills. Complaints stated that she frequently locked her children out of the house, got involved in domestic disputes, putting her children in danger, and ended up drinking excessively. Police and Department of Human Resources (DHS) employees were regular visitors to her apartment. Lori's relationship with Ashley was also strained, with conflicts often culminating in massive spats. Shockingly, during the last summer before her death, Ashley told her friends and teachers that the father of one of her friends had abused her. The accusations were reported by her teachers to the Oregon DHS, but shockingly, Lori never intervened. A report determined that Ashley and her siblings were receiving minimally adequate care under their mother's wing. It was puzzling why, despite all this turmoil, the Child Protective Services took no action. When police questioned Lori, she was honest. She immediately admitted her conflicts with Ashley and their unstable relationship. However, she also insisted that underneath all the scuffles, they shared a loving mother-daughter bond. Besides, she stuck to the story she told the investigators on the first day, implying that there were no discrepancies in her statements. Although investigators did not come across any feasible motives, they still persisted with Lori to take a polygraph test. After she passed the polygraph, she was ruled out as a suspect. After police eliminated Ashley's family members and loved ones, they unfortunately did not have a lot of leads. The area around the Newell Creek apartment complex was not great, and sexual offenders who could have had access to the building were high in number. The Oregon police interviewed almost all of them to search for new clues, but no efforts were successful. When all the leads were exhausted, the Oregon City Police Department requested assistance from the FBI on January 22, 2002. With the FBI's aid, the search to find Ashley Pond intensified. Ashley's abrupt vanishing hit the whole community of Oregon City hard, but the people who were taking it the hardest were her friends in school. On the morning of January 23, 2002, Anna Song, a reporter from Caddo News, interviewed a couple of kids at the bus stand while they were waiting for their school bus. It was the same bus stand where Ashley had caught her bus every day until she went missing. One of the girls participating in the interview was 13-year-old Miranda Gaddis, one of Ashley's closest friends as well as her neighbor.
That happened to one of your friends or something, it's just really different and really sad.
In a heartfelt interview, Miranda shared that she had no clue what might have happened to her friend, but she considered the possibility of kidnapping. However, Miranda also said that Ashley had confided to Miranda's sister about her desire to run away from home. Although Miranda kept smiling throughout the video, her concerns for Ashley were still visible. Sadly, the next time the face of Miranda Gaddis would appear on the news, she too would have mysteriously vanished. Miranda's life was not that different from Ashley's. Not only were they similar ages, but also resembled each other. But their similarities didn't stop there. They stayed in the same apartment building, attended the same school, belonged to the same dance team, hung out with the same friends, and both had been abused by the father figures in their lives. Both of the girls were also raised by their single mothers who had troubles of their own. The lives of the two best friends were destined to follow each other one last time in a malicious twist of fate. Miranda Gaddis was born on November 18, 1988 in Oregon City to her father Jason Richard Gaddis and mother Michelle Duffy. Just like Ashley, Miranda too grew up with her siblings, which included her older sister Marisa, her younger sister Mariah, and younger brother Jason. But unlike Ashley, Miranda's parents were married at the time of her birth. Yet that didn't change the fact that Miranda too was abused at her father's hand on a regular basis. In February of 1995, when Miranda was just 6 years old, her father, Jason Gaddis, was convicted of kidnapping 2 girls. He was sentenced to a grand total of 6 months in prison and was ordered 54 years of post-release supervision. Naturally, this incident led to the end of the marriage for Jason Gaddis and Michelle Duffy. Soon, Michelle got involved in a relationship with a man by the name of Brett Edward McKenney. Unfortunately, her taste in men would prove to be horrible. Just like Jason, Brett also had a habit of abusing young girls, and Miranda and her siblings weren't spared by him. He was later convicted of his crimes and was sent to prison. Following this abuse, Miranda and her siblings were placed in foster homes where they spent a short time before eventually returning to their mother's care. Despite tough times, Miranda enjoyed her life and loved to spend time with her siblings. Her friends described her as spunky, outgoing, funny, but very caring and loving at the same time. She had a passion for dance and saw herself becoming a model one day. One of the most admirable things about Miranda was that she took it upon herself to warn others of the dangers she saw, trying to save them from the evil side of the world that she witnessed. Motivated by Miranda's initiative, the Gardner Middle School dance team had been preparing for a dance performance scheduled on March 23, 2002. The performance was supposed to be part of a scheduled event to raise money for a reward fund for Ashley Pond, whose disappearance had been a painful mystery for almost 2 months at that point. Like many others, Miranda too began to let down her guard. Nobody knew that evil was still lurking around the corner. March 8, 2002 started like a normal day in Oregon City. By then, the community had almost recovered from the blow of 12-year-old Ashley's disappearance and had returned to its normal routine. At Miranda's house, the day began like most school days. At 7:30 a.m., Miranda's mother, Michelle, left for work when Miranda was getting ready for school. Michelle assumed that her daughter would follow her daily routine and set off for school by herself. She was oblivious to the fact that she was seeing her for the last time. At around 1:20 p.m. that day, Michelle got a call from her oldest daughter informing her that Miranda was not at school and none of her friends had seen her. A nervous Michelle then called the school to investigate the matter, where she learned that Miranda had indeed missed all of her classes that day. After what happened to Ashley just weeks before, Michelle did not waste time in alerting the authorities to her daughter's disappearance.
What's your home address where she's missing from?
14155 South Beaver Creek Road, number 201. The same as Ashley Pond.
And what's your daughter's name?
Miranda Gaddis, Gaddis, and no one's talked to her or seen her.
Everybody, including the Oregon City Police, noticed the eerie similarities between Miranda's disappearance and Ashley's. While the first case was still out in the open, this was another horrific strike on the town. The community was reeling from the shock in its wake, and panic cloaked the minds of every parent in the town. They were all scared to send their children outside alone, fearing that the abductor was still out there preying on young girls. Law enforcement officials also believed that the two disappearances were connected, possibly committed by the same person. But they were racing against time to find out the next move from the unknown perpetrator. They were considering all the worst possibilities at this point, and foul play was the first on that list. While the chances of getting the girls back seemed slim, investigators dedicated their time and efforts to finding any evidence that could help them unravel the mystery.
We're looking for people who have those time frames in common, who may have Ashley and Miranda in common.
The town was swarmed by the local and state law enforcement officials and FBI agents with their trained canine units. They also put up major advertisements with the girls' faces on billboards to bring awareness to the case. The dance, which was supposed to be held for Ashley, became a fundraiser for both girls. The solo performance Miranda was preparing was performed by her older sister. Detectives were sweeping the area, stopping cars and interviewing locals. There was one particular house that caught their attention. Detectives from the Oregon City Police Department went to talk to the resident of the house, a 39-year-old man who went by the name Ward Weaver. Ward Weaver's house was at the top of the hill where Ashley and Miranda's bus stop had been. The home, positioned at the exact location of 2507 South Beaver Creek Road, was rented out for $600 a month. Ward Weaver moved into the rental house in August 1997. By 2002, he was living in that home with his 12-year-old daughter Mallory, his 19-year-old son Francis, and a girlfriend who he'd met at work and become romantically involved with. Mallory, who attended the same school as Ashley and Miranda, was friends with both of them. They hung out with the same group and spent a lot of time together, sometimes even after school. Mallory was very popular among her friends, especially because her home was a place where the children could hang out without any restrictions. Weaver had a huge backyard where all the kids played hide and seek and enjoyed junk food. Ward Weaver even allowed regular sleepovers at his house. Both Miranda and Ashley often spent time with Mallory, and Ashley frequently stayed there for sleepovers. However, Mallory was not the only one who was popular. Her father, Ward Weaver, also played a huge part in entertaining the children. He was basically the cool dad in town, whose house symbolized an open invitation for neighborhood kids. Since Ward Weaver's house was just off the street to the bus stand where both girls had been headed on the day of their disappearance, investigators decided to make a stop there. Weaver seemed friendly and cooperative enough to the investigators. He agreed that Miranda and Ashley both spent time in his house, but he denied seeing anything on the days of their disappearance. He also said that Ashley was a troubled teen who had all the reasons to run away from home. However, he did not have anything to say about Miranda. Although Weaver was not being considered as a suspect, investigators still requested if they could conduct a search at the home. Weaver voluntarily invited the officers to search his house and backyard, but they ended up finding nothing. Weaver also had an alibi, saying he was at work on both of those days and provided a time card to prove it. With nothing amiss at Weaver's house, detectives decided to pursue other leads. After interviewing several people in the Newell apartment complex, the FBI turned their attention to the two young men in their 20s named Adam and Scott. The men, who were roommates, lived in the same apartment complex. People called them perverts due to their habits of looking at young girls and passing derogatory comments at them. Investigators even learned that in the past, these two individuals were accused of making offensive comments about Ashley and Miranda. It was enough to believe that these two men might have had something to do with the kidnappings of both girls. To obtain more proof, a few undercover FBI agents attended a prayer held for Ashley and Miranda, where Scott and Adam were also present. The agents overheard them talking about the missing girls and their desires of staying out of the eyes of law. This raised a lot of eyebrows, so much so that they placed Adam and Scott under surveillance. Just a few days later, the men were caught trying to talk to a young woman and get her inside their car. This was a scenario for a possible abduction, and the agents intervened to make sure that didn't happen. This act gave police enough reason to ask for a polygraph test. Surprisingly, they both passed the polygraph test. Investigators interviewed them for hours and even searched their apartment, but came up empty-handed. Regardless of their creepy behavior, police did not find any evidence to connect them to the missing girls. Days were turning into weeks, and weeks were turning into months without any significant development in the case. Just when the case seemed to be losing momentum, a shocking twist came to light from an unlikely source. Now that the investigators working the case of Ashley and Miranda's disappearance were grasping at straws, they were all in for obtaining information, even when it came from middle school gossip. But they were oblivious to the fact that what started with gossip could change the whole direction of the investigation and reveal an alarming truth. Upon investigating the lead, detectives learned that in August of 2001, prior to her disappearance, Ashley had accused Ward Weaver of taking advantage of her and stopped going to his house. Unfortunately, none of her friends, including Weaver's daughter Mallory, believed her. The only person who had Ashley's back at the time was Miranda. Although the charges were reported, it had gone nowhere and no actions were ever taken. Yet Mallory couldn't let this go. The feud was so serious that it ruined their friendship entirely. Investigators also learned that in the weeks leading up to Miranda's disappearance, she'd warned a couple of her friends from going to the Weavers' house, hinting that the man was dangerous. Investigators were taken aback by this revelation. But this was not the end of the twists in this case. It was just the beginning. When investigators dug deeper, they found that Ward Weaver testified in court for Ashley's father, Wesley Roetger, denying all the accusations thrown at him and calling out the little girl as a liar. But was the seemingly amazing father capable of committing such an unspeakable act? Were the rumors valid enough to believe? Investigators were forced with a tumultuous situation where they had more questions than answers. So in May of 2002, Ward Weaver was invited to the Oregon Police Department to take a polygraph test. Just as it was expected, he miserably failed the test. But other than the polygraph, police had no concrete evidence against this man. The test itself was also useless because polygraph tests are not admissible in a court of law. These tests only helped to shape the investigation, and that's what it did. From a good Samaritan, Ward Weaver became the prime suspect in the blink of an eye. To obtain solid proof, investigators knew they had to look deeper into his past. Ward Weaver III was born April 6, 1963 in Humboldt County, California, to his mother Trish and his father Ward Weaver Jr. In 1967, when Weaver was just 4, his father abandoned the family. Weaver and his 2 sisters stayed with their mother. Shortly after the separation, Trish met her second husband, Bob Boudreau, an abusive alcoholic. In the years that followed, Trish gave birth to 2 more boys. But her second marriage wasn't any happier than her first. The home life was extremely abusive, with Weaver and his siblings often getting beatings by Bob. Weaver began exhibiting antisocial behavior from a very young age. Driven by his explosive temper, he often beat his younger siblings and showed cruelty towards animals. It was almost like he was following in the footsteps of the father figures in his life, which was targeting violence towards the vulnerable. In 1981, Weaver graduated from Marshall High School in Portland and joined the U.S. Navy Reserve. He was discharged the following year for heavy drinking. However, during his short tenure in the Navy, Weaver met his future wife, Maria Stout. Soon, Weaver moved in with his mother and stepfather along with Maria, who soon became pregnant. But the couple did not share a healthy relationship. 5 months into Maria's pregnancy, she was hospitalized due to Weaver's physical assault on her. However, she refused to press charges. In December of 1982, Maria gave birth to a son named Francis Weaver. In August 1984, Maria and Weaver got married and soon became parents of their second son, Alex. But even then, fights continued between the couple, resulting in a situation where both of them were taking out their frustration on their children by beating and abusing them. Child Protection Services finally got involved and removed the children from the home for a brief period. During this time, Weaver hoped to reconnect with his biological father. But the decision of getting back to his roots led him to nothing but darkness. Weaver discovered that his father was on trial for double murder he'd committed back in 1981. He killed an 18-year-old Air Force recruit, Robert Radford, and his 23-year-old girlfriend, Barbara Lavoie, near the Mojave Desert in California and buried them in his backyard. In late 1984, he was sentenced to death for his crimes. Weaver later regretted that he wasn't called to the stand as a character witness. He'd go on to say that he loved his father and did not want to see him executed. By 1986, Weaver and Maria were living in Fairfield, California, with the Ordona family. On June 15, 1986, Weaver headed out to drink and launched an unprovoked attack on the teenage daughters of the Ordonas, 16-year-old Jennifer and 15-year-old Jocelyn. Weaver was sentenced to 3 years in prison for the assault. During this period, he told a probation officer that his biggest fear was ending up like his father. While Weaver was sent to prison, Maria welcomed their third son. After his release in 1991, Maria gave birth to their fourth child, Mallory. But Weaver and Maria were even more miserable as parents than they were as a couple. It was evident that the marriage was not going to work. In 1993, Maria filed a restraining order against her husband, finally putting an end to their 9-year marriage. In August 1997, Weaver had begun a new romance with a data entry clerk at Laclade chain, where he worked in shipping. With his new girlfriend, son Francis, and daughter Mallory, Weaver then settled down in the rental house on South Beaver Creek Road in Oregon City. As investigators were busy digging up the dirt of his past, Ward Weaver did something which no one saw coming. To present himself as a person who had been wrongfully targeted by authorities, Ward Weaver took a gamble. On July 3, 2002, he invited reporter Anna Song from the Caddo News Channel for an interview. By allowing the media into his home, Ward Weaver hoped to transfer the limelight towards him, but in a positive way. During the interview, when Anna asked him about his failed polygraph test, he blamed it on the incompetence of the Oregon police. He also stated that he wouldn't be cooperative with the law enforcement anymore.
The fact is, they come back around and want more help from me. I'm done.
He also did not hesitate to openly discuss Ashley's allegations against him. When Anna Song asked him about his opinions on what had happened to the girls, he said that he did not believe they both met the same fate.
I know Ashley ran away, and the fact that the FBI are throwing both of these cases, into someone took them both.
Before leaving, Anna proposed a tour of Weaver's house, implying that he shouldn't have any problem if he didn't have anything to hide. Weaver did not get cold feet. He started with his bedroom while describing his daughter's slumber parties with her friends. But amidst all this, he made a very disturbing comment.
You could not walk anywhere in my front room without stepping on a body.
After he gave a tour of the inside of his house, he went outside and casually strolled on the concrete slab in his backyard with Anna beside him. Considering what would be discovered later, this video clip is nothing short of a bone-chilling moment frozen in time, an unsettling twist awaiting to be unveiled. Ward Weaver would go on to do multiple interviews claiming that he had no reason to hurt those girls, and he was a victim of the law enforcement's tunnel vision. At one point, he openly claimed before the media that he was ready to pack his bags and leave Oregon forever.
I'm going to go check, a couple places out and see what's got the best chances for jobs, and I'm out of here.
Despite the media circus, authorities were at a standstill. They knew they had to act fast, but they had no substantial evidence. Their potential lead was at a risk of slipping away. While desperately trying to obtain a search warrant, investigators kept their fingers crossed. In a final twist and turn, Ward Weaver himself would provide them the much-awaited chance just 1 month later. On August 13, 2002, a distressing 911 call came into the Oregon Police Department. With fear in her voice, the woman reported how Ward Weaver had assaulted her. The woman was identified as the girlfriend of Francis, Ward Weaver's son. Fortunately, she managed to escape the house and place the 911 call from a nearby convenience store. Police were dispatched to Weaver's house, but by then he'd already fled the scene. A nationwide manhunt was launched to find Weaver, and after a few hours, their perseverance paid off. Around evening time that same day, police finally located Weaver and took him into custody for questioning. Authorities heaved a sigh of relief seeing Weaver wouldn't be able to flee the country or be able to hurt anyone else as long as he was sitting in jail. But the investigation into the disappearance of Ashley and Miranda was not yet over, and investigators were still waiting to be issued a search warrant. Their wait would soon come to an end when another 911 call came in, this time from Weaver's son, Francis. Francis said that he needed to get something off his chest. He then revealed to the police what his father had confided in him a day before.
I need to tell everyone about my father, man. About what he did to those girls.
Okay. What do you think he did?
I know what he did, man. He did that for girls. man and killed him. This is where I have to stop against my family, man. Me and my brothers aren't like that. We got a good heart. If I have to, I will testify against my own father.
This call from Francis Weaver broke the case wide open. It was instrumental for the investigators to obtain the search warrant they'd been trying to get for so long. Francis, on the other hand, believed he was doing the right thing, despite the dilemma of turning in his own father. That's why when the FBI informed him that he was not in fact Ward Weaver's biological son, but the result of his mother's affair, he was rather happy. On August 23, 2002, Oregon police, with the assistance of FBI agents, began searching the property. The police crews cordoned off the area, fenced up the property, and put up a few tents to block media from broadcasting the event while they searched for any evidence that could link Weaver to the missing girls. The search extended to the backyard the next day, when police brought the cadaver dogs inside the property. The grasp on hope was loosening at this point, yet the loved ones for both girls wanted nothing more than closure. To the investigators, the backyard was nothing but a creepy horror movie. As they entered the backyard, they were welcomed by a foul odor. There was a shed in the backyard where paper strips were hanging from the ceiling, encrusted with dead flies. In that shed, investigators stumbled upon a cardboard box. Inside the box, human remains were stored. The remains were then taken to the medical examiners for identification. On Sunday, August 24, 2002, FBI personnel came out with the identity of the human remains in a news conference. And this was all Miranda's younger sister could make of this news.
4:15 this afternoon, the Oregon State Medical Examiner has positively identified the remains discovered yesterday as the body of Miranda Gaddis.
While Miranda's remains were found, investigators still had to find Ashley. When they couldn't find anything more in the shed, the task force shifted their attention to other portions of the backyard, especially to a suspicious concrete slab. It was the same concrete slab Weaver was walking on when he was talking to Anna Song in his interview. Breaking through the cement slab, they encountered 3 unusually large barrels. In one of those barrels, another set of human remains was found. The condition of the second set of remains was a lot different than Miranda's. It appeared that they'd been placed in a freezer at some point in time. After searching, they discovered a freezer, which they believed was used for storing the remains. The medical examiner's office eventually concluded that the remains indeed belonged to Ashley Pond. For Ashley's family, too, the news was overwhelming. Ward Weaver, who was already sitting in jail, was indicted for the aggravated murders of Ashley and Miranda. These charges hold the death penalty in the state of Oregon, which Weaver was facing. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Weaver kept denying that he had anything to do with the murders. Needless to say, the people of Oregon City were astounded with the outcome. It was frightening to think that they were putting their children in danger every time they sent them to that predator's house. So naturally, they were curious to see what Weaver had to say about his actions after he'd been unmasked. In early 2003, Anna Song sat with Weaver for a jail interview while he was in custody awaiting trial. She started the interview with the most intriguing question. After he denied murdering the girls, the next question was then, how did their bodies end up at his rental property?
So when you walked me over the concrete slab in July when we did our interview, you had no idea that Ashley Pond's remains were buried underneath it?
None. Nope.
And Weaver, as it seemed, was not going to give in so soon. Regardless of the words coming out of his mouth, his demeanor plainly displayed his lack of remorse. It's unfathomable how a good father and caring citizen from the July 2002 interview had been replaced by a cold-hearted and nonchalant man who would not even acknowledge the dreadful consequences of his own actions. Taking it one step further, he even laughed when the reporter reminded him about his son's claims in his confession. Before summing up the interview, Anna Song asked if he had anything to say to Ashley and Miranda's family members.
To Miranda, or actually to Michelle and her family, yeah, I'm sorry, but this, everybody's barking up the wrong tree on me.
But perhaps he realized his lies were failing to cover up his heinous crimes. Yet instead of keeping his mouth shut, he kept coming in front of the media, even after his lawyers advised against it. On March 27, 2003, Weaver's lawyers filed a motion retracting themselves from the case because Weaver wasn't following their counsel. When new attorneys were appointed, they told the court that they needed another year to prepare for the trial. When everybody thought that there was nothing left in the case but to wait for the trial, Weaver still had a trick up his sleeve. At the beginning of 2004, Weaver began to act erratically. He claimed that he heard voices, and to support that statement, he started stuffing toilet papers deep into his ears. Some toilet papers were stuffed so deep that he had to visit the hospital to remove them. His lawyers filed a motion urging a medical evaluation to ensure that he was mentally stable to appear in court. After a few months, the judge declared him unfit to stand trial. On August 25, 2004, Weaver, now heavily medicated, appeared in court again. This time he was deemed fit to stand trial. But Ward Weaver was a man who loved to play games. And he was ready to reveal his final twist. He wanted to plead guilty to the charges and avoid the death penalty in the process. Before the plea bargain was offered to Weaver, it was sent for the approval of the Pond and Gaddis families. Despite their desire to send Weaver to the exact place where their daughters were, they decided to not go through with the depressing ordeal of a long trial. On September 22, 2004, Ward Weaver pleaded guilty to the aggravated murder charges. Before handing down his sentence, the judge passed some thought-provoking words.
When you look at the magnitude of what you've done here, I really just see nothing but evil.
Weaver was sentenced to the maximum penalty possible, which was life in prison without the possibility of parole. Unfortunately, the plea bargain robbed the opportunity for Ashley and Miranda's families to get answers. There was no information about exactly why and how the girls were killed. Perhaps there would have never been a hint of this either if Miranda's younger sister, Mariah, didn't take it upon herself. In 2009, she met Weaver in jail, hoping for answers that would provide her family with proper closure. Ward Weaver was supposed to be forgotten to the world after this, but he left behind an evil family legacy. In 2016, Ward Weaver's stepson, Francis Weaver, was sentenced to life in prison for his role in the 2014 killing of the Grants Pass man during a drug deal that turned deadly. Perhaps the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Call it a twist of fate or just coincidence, but now 3 generations of the Weaver family are behind bars. The house where Ward Weaver once lived and committed his monstrous acts has now been torn down. Today, the place lies as vacant land, asking us if we really know the people who live among us. Lori and Michelle left Oregon, knowing that the lives of their daughters were taken by a man they once trusted. What do you think really happened to Ashley and Miranda? Did Weaver's jail interview provide you any insights? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more spine-chilling videos like this.